there are a lot of people that have like a lot of questions for God, things that they would like to ask, and I think AI can probably help with answering a lot of these questions. You know, I can give my answers, but I think there's a huge number of questions, and I feel like if you can look at my answers and see how I would answer them, and then find some way of telling AI or ChatGPT that these are the answers, and this is how to answer a lot of these questions. I think that might be quite a good idea. Just making sure the framing's right. I kept making the wrong framing in the last video. But yeah, I just looked up some questions now because it's kind of made me think that there's a lot of answers. One thing to make a film about all the different time periods, it might be an idea to actually ask the public, if you have any questions about history, and you could ask God, why did so and so happen? Why did the Egyptians worship loads of gods? I would have said that everyone has their own view on what God was like, and everyone back then was creating different views. So I deliberately kind of infiltrated their beliefs by getting them to draw up gods that are ridiculous. This ancient film is now talking about Aztec gods, and they look ridiculous. The statues of these, I don't know, they look like funny cartoons, but weird. I feel like if someone would ask me why did the Aztecs worship these gods, I would say that it's because they wanted to worship a god, but they didn't know what God was like, and I deliberately got them to worship kind of silly views or silly perspectives of God, so that when something more established came in later, e.g. the one God, and okay, Christianity, okay, I'm not a fan of Christianity because I know it's full of flaws and stuff, but I deliberately do this, and I continuously do this. I put loads of flaws in the Bible deliberately so that when I would come telling my truth, it would be easy to say, the Bible is full of flaws. But in the same way, this is how the Bible became popular, because people would look at the religions of the past, and they were even more ridiculous, even more silly creatures and silly alligator gods and gods that have strange heads and stuff. There's a process, and if I knew that I wanted people to worship me, I guess there's different stages that I have created to allow this to happen. And if you were to go on to become a god and form a timeline, okay, you'll probably be working with less souls, so hopefully you'd be able to give everyone 10 lives before you actually come down to Earth. And I think if you came down to a world where the majority of souls have had 10 lives, they'd probably be all a lot more advanced, so you wouldn't go through anywhere near the problems I'm facing. I think the main reason why I'm going through a ton of problems is because the average person on Earth has only lived 3 or 4 lives, hence their mental state is terrible. And I feel like this is the reason why Christianity and Jesus needed to be so strong to help fix population numbers, because if you're worshipping the idea that heaven is just a place that you can only get to after you die, then you are worshipping a death cult. And if someone was to ask me a question, questions are important. Why would you, if heaven exists, why would you not just send people to heaven? I would say that the reason why is that heaven doesn't actually exist, but when I come, I need to promote the idea of getting into heaven. Why? Because I know that the mass population will be way more than I can handle, and I need to encourage people to choose to go to heaven, because that shows their loyalty to the Christ that they have chosen to worship. And it is for this reason that when I get exposed, I want to expose my truth, but I want to do it on a very low key. I don't want to be going in there and trying to convert people to my religion. I'd want people to believe, see the truth about how Moses' God was not the truth. And if you can believe that Moses' God was not worshipping the true God, then that also means that Jesus' teachings also become questionable, because maybe he too was worshipping a false God, because he kind of worshipped the same God as Moses and was doing pretty much the similar thing. Only I can teach a lot more through his lies. I can teach a lot of things, whereas through the lies of Moses, I don't think I can teach that much, because they're kind of just myths. But yeah, there is a reason why things happen. There is a reason why Christianity is so strong. There is a reason why so many people have turned to Islam, and there is a reason why God needs to have a test. There is a reason why heaven is promoted as being somewhere you can only get to after death. There's a reason why a lot of people promote the rapture. The answer to the questions, though, are not something that I should reveal, because there is a reason for it. Hence, some things need to be kept secret. When the Egyptians were creating all their gods, their animal gods and stuff, they look ridiculous. When the Aztecs were creating these sort of cartoon-like figure gods out of stone, there was a reason why they looked so ridiculous and scary as well, because the idea was for them to form these gods and then later for them to reject them, because of the obvious truth that they don't reflect human how humans are. They might reflect how humans were back then, because they were more like animals themselves, and in fact that this will probably be the main reason why Egyptians worship so many animals, because they were, in their past life, most of them would have been animals, and they were picking up on the fact that maybe they were an alligator or something in a past, and so they were looking at these gods and feeling similarity with them because of their closeness to their lives as an animal, and it was bringing back a part of them. But yes, as the civilization changed, and more people lived more and more human lives, they wanted to relate to something that was more human, so this is why it changes. But there is a reason why the path has happened, and I think it would be a good idea to answer all these questions, but because I don't actually want to promote myself as being God for the first 3.5 years of the tribulation, because I want people to go to heaven, and I want people to, they can reject Moses and they can reject Islam, if they want to convert and just worship Jesus as being the real Christ, or me as being the real Christ, and Jesus just being someone who led people to me, but at the same time still see me not as a god, but just someone who must suffer for them to get into heaven. I feel like that needs to be promoted, just because the main reason why suffering happens is because there's not enough resources, and there's not enough skilled workers, and unfortunately, when you've got this situation, the best thing to do is to reduce the population so there won't be such a fight over the resources. And no one wants to live in a world where you can see poverty, but you can't help the poor because they just go on to have 10 kids, and then you'll just have a bigger population problem that are poor. You can't keep helping people, because they'll only have more kids, and then the problem of overpopulation will just get worse. So there's a reason for why things happen, and maybe one idea could be, in the stage when you're not promoting me as God, maybe I should just I would love to work with ChatGPT and answer the questions, so you can get so you can kind of like create a false god, like what Moses did and like what the Egyptians did. I don't mind people creating a false god. If you want to create AI using a false god, but take my questions, so I can answer the questions, and then you can get ChatGPT to talk to people through this false god that you've created. But really, it's not a false god, because you've got the information from me, or if you have an understanding of me and how I would answer questions, then you would probably be able to understand what I would answer. Even if I haven't actually said the answer, you can kind of figure it out. But here's just an idea. I've looked up Google, and I've asked some basic questions, such as some questions to ask God. How can I be sure to get into heaven? I guess the truth is that heaven doesn't actually exist, and heaven is just a nice place on earth, and the best way to do that is to work really hard in your current life, and maybe you'll be learning how to make more money, or maybe you'll learn what you like and you'll make friends, and heaven is just a place where you can enjoy things. But yes, if you're at a stage where you're trying to get people into heaven because you're trying to reduce the population, then I think the answer to that question needs to change, and it needs to be by sacrificing me, and then going in the rapture. Let's just call it rapture, because we don't want to say the real word. But yeah, so that's a question that has two answers. One is right, and one is right, but only to trick people. then there's one, why is there so much suffering in the world? There's too many people, there's not enough skilled labour, not enough people know how to have a good job, or to how to pay for things. People are having kids. I think one of the main problems is people are having kids when they can't afford to look after them. Hell is where you are a child who's forced into prostitution, or forced into having a horrible life where you can't have a proper house to live in, or this is horrible. But people have kids because they think that murder or having an abortion is worse, or maybe they can't afford an abortion. So yeah, this is why suffering happens, because people make people suffer, and the rich as well. We all love our free clothes or cheap clothes, and this comes through slavery, and but the people at the top who have the cheap clothes also suffer in different ways, and suffering is kind of a part of life, and I think you need to accept that. Why did my brother have to die? Death happens for many different reasons. The cause there can be multiple causes as to why a person's body dies, accident or health reasons, or suicide, personal choice. But why does death have to happen? Because this is how the soul can enter into a different body, and death is part of life, because if no one died, then the population's just going to get massive really, really quickly. And if people do end up losing an arm or something, you wouldn't want to live your whole life with a missing arm. But death allows you to get a new body, and it also helps even up the rich versus poor. If you are really, really rich but treat people like absolute shit, you're going to build up a huge amount of karma, and if you die, then that karma can be read and analyzed by the Matrix, the sort of AI computer that analyzes you and judges you, and it can give you a life that's destined to be in a more horrible circumstance, which will help pay off the karma that you've received. If you are a man who's raped 10 people, you might find yourself dying and then being reincarnated as a woman, and then you might find yourself ending up in that same situation that you put others in. If you start torturing animals and stuff, again, you might find yourself coming back as an animal and having other people torture you. So this is why death is a curse and a blessing at the same time. Why did my dad leave you? Well, there's many reasons why a father would leave a child. Maybe he didn't want a child in the first place. Maybe he just had careless sex without thinking about the kids. Maybe he didn't care about a kid, didn't like the mother. Maybe he didn't think he was ready, but the mother didn't want an abortion, or maybe he couldn't afford abortion. There's loads of different reasons, but technically the answer is you have to ask your father why he left you. You don't blame God for something that God did not do. So yeah, that would be the main question I would ask. Why are you asking God about the personal choices of your father? Everyone is different, and it's not possible to know what his personal choices were or his reasons for it. Sometimes mental illness is a reason why a dad would walk out. If he can't look after himself, how can he look after a child? But yes, he shouldn't. What really happens when you die? I am going to say that your soul gets put on pause, and it waits until it's given another body. I'm not talking about, I don't believe in incarnation, so I wouldn't say that it goes to another place. I think after the timeline dies, there will be souls that can make it into another place, but this is a long, long time away, and it's best not to focus on that, but rather to focus on your lives and working well to build the life and community and the world that you want on earth. Would a loving God really put a good man like Job through horrible suffering just to test his loyalty? The answer is one, how do you know Job was really a good person? And two, I think I do test people's loyalty. I wouldn't say that it's through cursing people, but I would test people's loyalty. Problem is, I'm God. Now, how many people have been loyal to me? How many people would stay loyal to me? I don't think anyone. I would be lucky if someone supports me. That's how I feel. And I would test someone's loyalty. Yes, I would put someone through suffering to test their loyalty. But the thing is, if you've got 8 million people and you want to know who's most loyal, who's most who wants to stick with your side of things, I would put people through to test them. The problem is no one in this world knows who I am. So how can I test people on their loyalty when I know that none are loyal to me? None are loyal to me. Job was not worshipping me. He did not love me. He did not support me. So the answer, would God really put a good man like Job? Just say a good man, not like Job. Just put a good person through horrible suffering as a test of loyalty. I would if I needed to be more selective on who is alive. If the world was full of good people, but the world was dying because of overpopulation, then yes, I would put people through a test to select the best. And likewise, if there comes a time where I need to choose people who I think are best to go on to become gods, it wouldn't be about loyalty, but it would be about loyalty to do what's right. Who is going to stick to the good choices? Who is going to work hard? Who is going to stand up for what is right? When it comes to choosing gods, I need to choose the right people, the right candidates, and there will be a test to find out which souls would go on to make the best gods, which souls are the strongest. And part of being strong means that you need to suffer. I have gone through a lot of suffering. When you become a god on a planet, the world is going to hate you. The world is not going to want you, and you're going to have to say, right, well, let's just do what's best. I didn't create multiple gods in the Egyptian times because that was what's best for me. I created multiple gods because they all wanted to create a god, and they all wanted their own opinion. So I said, fine, you want lots of variety of different gods, and I'll give you that, but I'm going to make them look a little bit silly so that one day you'll reject them. So that's a kind of a compromise. And it's not, being a god is not about doing what's best for you. It's about doing what's best for the timeline, for the population. And you have to also be very strong, because you know that your people are going to torture other people. You know that your people are going to kill each other. You know that your people are going to turn each other into slaves, and they're going to try and blame you for everything that they do. Or they're going to blame you for everything. And therefore, you have to work with them, and you have to not put yourself above them. But at the same time, you must put yourself above them, because part of being above them is being able to rationalize and think clearly, and not think like them, not think I'm going to hurt them because they've hurt me. And I'm trying really hard to do that, because that's so hard. Yeah, I think if people ignore me, then I'm going to ignore them, and I think that's the sort of okay message that I can send. But yeah, people aren't physically hurting me, so I'm not going to physically hurt them. But you've got to be you've got to be strong, and you've got to be smart, and this is what makes a good god. Sorry, I got a little chart there that shows. I'm holding the camera up. Why am I holding the camera up? I don't know. Maybe it would be better if it actually hurts my arm. Ow, 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 ow. Okay. If God knows everything, why did he test Abraham's faith by asking him to sacrifice his son? That is a good question, because it is a flaw in the story, and therefore you're not worshipping the right God. Abraham's God didn't know if he would sacrifice his God or not, so he's not worshipping the real God. The real God knows the future knows the beginning from the end, hence knows everything that Abraham would do. But yes, Abraham I think a lot of the stories in the Bible is actually a reflection on what needs to happen when I come. There are too many people here, and I need the older souls to get rid of the younger souls, and therefore stories like this help back up and support this claim. And I think this is the real reason as to why these stories were created, not because I really want this to happen, but more it's something that needs to happen because we are in the situation that we are in with overpopulation. But yeah, the fact that God would ask this of someone proves that this God is not loving and not kind, and therefore, if you are believing that God is all loving and all kind, and yet would ask Abraham to kill his son, then it proves that there's obviously lots of things in the Bible that are wrong. Hence, you shouldn't necessarily believe it. How could there be just one God yet three? The reason why there are one God yet three is because there's Dala, who was a cave woman, Elia, who was a coloured person, who was a singer, and then there was me, who is white. We are all the same person, but we're not. We have very different memories, very different upbringings, very different lives. We have very different memories, and this is what has made God up. I know the Christianity tells it differently. You say the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and yet they call that one, which doesn't make any sense. And it's supposed to not make any sense because it's not the truth, and it's supposed to make people question whether or not this Christianity is the truth, because how can God be one and yet three at the same time? You know, I am God and I have a spirit inside of me, and I had a son when I was Dala. But yeah, we're not all the same person. So if you think the Trinity represents the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, if you want to worship that as being the God, well, it's a lie. You can't worship. You can't be three. God cannot be three. God cannot be these three at the same time. And God is a mother, not a father. But yes, and is God the only one? Yes, I am the only one here. Here is the correction. On other planets, other suns, there might be there are other gods, but here I'm the only one. Does God have a reason for allowing suffering? I don't allow suffering. I don't have the power to stop suffering is the correct way of saying it. To believe that God can end suffering is to worship a false God and something that God cannot do. Does God help only those who help themselves? If you help yourself, you might have... There's good and bad in everything. You know, you can help yourself and do things for yourself, but God can use that for a greater purpose, so there's nothing wrong with helping yourself. Do I only use those who help themselves? No, of course not. If you want to help others, then great, but I think it also depends on who you're helping. If you are helping people who I don't like and who I don't want to support because I don't feel they support me, then I'm not going to help you, because I don't think you're helping me by helping people who are not supporting me. You know, I do feel like Christians have built up an army against me, and they are, you know, insulting me by heresy, you know, claiming to know that I do this and I do this when I don't. I don't do those things, and therefore it's you know, it's a false religion. And if you're going to help those people, well, there's good and bad in it, because I've created this false religion for a reason. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, because this false religion is going to lead people into heaven, the false one, and so it's a complex question. But people who help themselves are often motivated. The singers and celebrities who have written songs, you know, they're helping themselves because they're creating, you know, they've got a career and they want to do this, but because they have goals, you know, it's easy to get them to make songs. And I do like music, and I can help them, you know, create different characters and prove my strength through them by naming them naming them certain things which link to all the songs, but you don't know what their hidden name is until after they've written all the songs, and only when you know that name do you link all the songs to that name and be like, oh, that's impressive. So but yeah, they didn't do that to help me, they did it to help themselves. But I can use people who help themselves just as much as I can use people who help others, and it's complicated. How could a holy God create evil? Well, holy means creepy, evil, or unpredictable. So a holy God can create evil, because that is what a holy God is. Holy God is evil and unpredictable. But yeah, to think that other people's choices are to do with me, that's not... Sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's true and sometimes it's not. but yeah, there's good and bad in everything, and sometimes evil happens for good reasons, and sometimes good things happen for evil reasons. And therefore, I wish people would stop seeing God as something that creates good, creates everything. God is not something that does everything. That is a false God. How does God speak to people today? Today I do it through making these little videos. Chat, 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 chat. This is God speaking. If you think that God is speaking to you through your head, it's bullshit and it's a lie. If you are creating songs, or if you feel you're inspired to do things, I think God does definitely talk through inspiration. But yeah, you might not understand the visions that you get until after, and you might find that the visions you've got have actually helped. There might be a lot of people that see Jesus and think that God has given them this message to say that Jesus is Christ, when really God might have actually given the vision of Jesus, but only because she wants that person to promote the lie, because promoting the lie helps promote, well, it helps get rid of other religions, and it might help people get into heaven because they want to continue believing the lie. If you've believed in Jesus for 10, 20, 30 years, it will be very hard for you to come away from it. Whereas if you've believed it for a short time, it might be easy to fall away. But maybe she doesn't want you to fall away.